Hi, everyone. Today we begin our series of State of the School District. We're going to start with those districts that are located near large metro areas and that offer value to parents who may be thinking about moving, as so many young parents may be doing. Today's subject of our discussion is the Scarsdale School District. It came up in casual conversation recently, so I figured we'd start there. Before we get into Scarsdale, let me briefly explain who we are and why we are doing this work. I am Eric, the founder of schooldecision.com by Formative Spaces, Inc. We help families, educators, and communities understand schools and districts through source-backed profiles, district reports, performance data, program context, athletics and activity coverage, and clear comparisons. Our goal is to make school decisions more factual, more navigable, and more useful. The reason I built this organization was because I felt that the incumbent school rating sites were questionable at best for schooling and home buying decisions I was making for my own young children. I have a background in advanced data analytics and data science, so I figured this is something I could build and do better instead of complaining to my wife about my issues with the incumbent sites. We also recently changed our domain from schooldata.ai to schooldecision.com. Part of that was practical. We wanted a name that would perform better in Google search and make it clearer what the site is about. But the larger reason is strategic. We are not analyzing school data for its own sake. We are trying to help families make better schooling decisions. The point is not just data, the point is decision making. With that in mind, this is our 2026 look at Scarsdale, New York, and the Scarsdale Union Free School District. The first thing to say is that Scarsdale starts from a position of unusual strength. This is not a district trying to prove that it can perform. By the most common public measures, Scarsdale already performs at a very high level. College enrollment is high. SAT and ACT results are strong. AP results are strong. Regents results are strong. State assessment outcomes are strong. New York State lists the district as serving a little under 4,700 students in grades K through 12, and it classifies Scarsdale under local support and improvement rather than one of the state's higher intervention categories. But the more interesting story is not simply that Scarsdale performs well. A lot of people already know that. The more interesting story is that Scarsdale is trying to preserve elite academic outcomes while evolving the way school works. The district is putting more emphasis on student choice, inquiry, performance-based assessment, interdisciplinary work, real-world application, and a broader definition of success than test scores alone. In Scarsdale's own language, this is often described through the phrase learning, living, and leading. In plain English, that means the district is trying to combine academic rigor with student well-being, belonging, civic purpose, and what it calls student agency. That phrase, student agency, is worth slowing down on because it can sound abstract. In Scarsdale, student agency does not appear to mean that students just do whatever they want. It does not mean lower expectations, less structure, or less rigor. It means students are given more structured opportunities to make choices, pursue meaningful questions, demonstrate what they know in different ways, and apply their learning outside traditional classroom tasks. It is about helping students become capable, confident, thoughtful people who can make decisions and contribute to the world around them. So the central finding is this: Scarsdale is not a turnaround story, it is a sustainability story. The question is not whether Scarsdale can produce high achievement, it already does. The real question is whether it can sustain excellence, breadth, innovation, community trust, and student well-being at the same time. That is harder than it sounds. Scarsdale has a high cost, high expectation, high service model. Families expect excellent academics, students expect access to advanced courses, athletics, arts clubs, travel, independent projects, and strong college preparation. The community expects strong facilities and small enough classes. At the same time, the district has to deal with rising costs, tax cap constraints, curriculum debates, student stress, assessment reform, facilities needs, and recent community tensions. So when we talk about Scarsdale in 2026, the story is not simply, this is a great district. The story is more nuanced. Scarsdale is trying to remain exceptional while redefining what exceptional should mean. Let's start with the academic profile. At the high school level, the class of 2025 outcomes were very strong. Scarsdale reported that 98% of graduates enrolled in college and 97% enrolled in four-year colleges. The same class had a mean SAT total score of 1,385, with a mean math score of 702 and a mean evidence-based reading and writing score of 683. On the ACT, Scarsdale reported that 88% of students met all four college readiness benchmarks, compared with 59% statewide. The AP trend is especially notable. From 2020 to 2025, Scarsdale's AP exam volume increased from 542 exams to 1,145 exams. That is more than double. Usually, when a district expands access to advanced testing, the average score can come down because more students are participating. But Scarsdale reported a mean AP score of 4.2 in 2025, with 95% of exams scoring 3 or higher. That is one of the clearest positive findings in the data. Scarsdale appears to have expanded AP participation while still maintaining very strong performance. K through 8 performance is also strong. In 2025, Scarsdale reported 93% proficiency across grades 3 through 8 in English language arts, with grade level proficiency rates between 91 and 95%. Science also stands out. Grade 5 science proficiency ranged from 87% to 97% across the elementary schools, and grade 8 science reached 94% proficiency, with 44% of students at level 4. Science is a quiet strength in the district. It often gets less attention than reading, math, AP, SAT, or college placement, but the available results suggest that science deserves to be part of the Scarsdale story. Now, it is important to be careful about how we use these numbers. One of the things we try to avoid at schooldecision.com is comparing schools in ways that are not fair or meaningful. For example, top-line school averages can be misleading because they often reflect who attends a school as much as what happens inside the school. A better method is to compare like with like. If you are looking at economically disadvantaged students, compare economically disadvantaged students with economically disadvantaged students. If you are looking at students who are not economically disadvantaged, compare them with students who are also not economically disadvantaged. Do not mix the two and pretend you are measuring school quality. For Scarsdale, though, there is a major data limitation. New York State enrollment data lists 0 economically disadvantaged students in Scarsdale in 2024 to 25 and 1 in 2023 to 24. That means an economically disadvantaged proficiency comparison across Scarsdale schools is not meaningful in the usual way. The group is essentially too small to analyze. School-level cells would likely be absent, suppressed, or statistically unusable. So this report does not rank Scarsdale schools using top-line proficiency averages. That would be the wrong method. Overall proficiency is useful as district context, but it should not be treated as a clean measure of school-level performance. For Scarsdale, the better equity questions may be different. They may involve access to advanced courses, special education supports, English learners, student belonging, stress, race and ethnicity where reportable, participation in activities, and who gets access to the most valuable learning experiences. That is an important point. In many districts, economically disadvantaged subgroup performance is central to understanding equity. In Scarsdale, because that subgroup is essentially not reportable, the equity conversation needs to use other valid lenses. Now let's talk about what makes Scarsdale's academic model distinctive. A lot of high-performing districts have strong test scores. A lot have high college enrollment. Scarsdale has those things, but it also has a broader opportunity system. One example is Advanced Topics. Advanced Topics is Scarsdale's district-specific advanced course model. These courses are described as college-level experiences built around powerful ideas, challenging content, independent work, deep exploration, close reading, writing, complex thinking, and resilience. These are not simply AP classes with a different label. Some Advanced Topics courses may align with AP exams, and some may prepare students for those exams. But the broader point is that Scarsdale is trying to define advanced learning as more than covering material for a test. The district describes these courses as involving authentic sources, interdisciplinary connections, analysis, synthesis, evaluation, original thinking, and independent research. That helps explain why Scarsdale's high school profile feels different from districts that define rigor mainly by AP volume. Scarsdale has strong AP results, but its advanced learning philosophy extends beyond AP. Another example is the STEAM Design Lab. This is Scarsdale High School's design, engineering, entrepreneurship, and technology pathway. It is hands-on and human-centered. Students work on real-world problems, from design challenges with constraints to community problems that require observation, interviews, and iteration. The pathway includes courses like Introduction to Engineering, Human-Centered Design, Robotics, Principles of Electrical Engineering, Design/Build, design for modern production, mobile app design and development, and advanced topics entrepreneurship. The program is structured across levels, with some courses requiring prerequisites, and AT entrepreneurship requiring an application, essay, and interview. This is one of the clearest examples of student agency in action. Students are not just learning content, they are learning to identify problems, design solutions, work with constraints, and communicate their ideas. Scarsdale also has senior options, which is a graduation requirement for all seniors. Starting in early May, seniors pursue unpaid community service, internships, independent projects, or workplace-based experiences with faculty mentoring and committee approval. This matters because real-world application is not just an optional add-on for a small group of students. In Scarsdale, Senior Options is positioned as a culminating experience for every graduate. It is one way the district tries to connect school learning with life beyond school. Then there is the Scarsdale Alternative School, which can be misunderstood if you only hear the name. In many places, alternative school means a remedial, disciplinary, or at-risk placement. That is not what it means here. The Scarsdale Alternative School is a long-standing experimental school within a school at Scarsdale High School. It was created in 1972 by students, teachers, and administrators, and it serves mainstream sophomores, juniors, and seniors who want more voice in their education. Students enter through a lottery after an information process. So in Scarsdale, the alternative school is best understood as a student voice and experimental learning option inside a high-performing high school. Scarsdale's global education program is another piece of the same pattern. The district emphasizes cultural understanding, global citizenship, inquiry, real-world application of curricular knowledge, relationships with people in other countries, independence, and adaptability. Again, the theme is not just academic mastery, it is preparation for life in an interconnected world. There is also the Scarsdale Fellowship for Social Entrepreneurs, which supports students working on environmental or societal problems. Students can identify a problem, propose a solution, pitch the idea, receive feedback, and potentially get funding. The fellowship is open to all high school students, not only those enrolled in advanced topics entrepreneurship. Taken together, these programs show that Scarsdale's language around student agency is more operational than rhetorical. It shows up in real structures: advanced topics, STEAM, senior options, the alternative school, global education, and social entrepreneurship. Assessment reform is another major part of the district's story. When people hear the phrase performance-based assessment, it can sound like jargon. What it means is that students demonstrate learning through something more authentic than a traditional test. That could be a presentation, product investigation, design, performance, written analysis, project, or other task that asks students to apply what they know. In a district like Scarsdale, the goal is not to lower standards. The goal is to measure deeper learning, transfer, communication, problem solving, and application. An outside review by the Tri-State Consortium is useful here because it gives us more than the district's own self-description. That review looked at assessments, classroom practice, and stakeholder perspectives. It praised Scarsdale's shared purpose, teacher engagement, growth mindset, and student-centered learning. It also pointed to student choice, students presenting work, inquiry, active learning, risk-taking, resilience, and higher-level thinking. But the review did not simply validate everything. It also recommended that Scarsdale build clearer common definitions for performance assessments and performance tasks. It recommended prioritizing meaningful assessment development, reviewing grading and assessment practices, reducing student pressure related to grades and assessments, and communicating more clearly with families about why these changes are being made. That combination is revealing. Scarsdale seems to have the ingredients for a sophisticated assessment model. It has strong teachers, engaged students, a community that cares, and a strategic plan that supports deeper learning. But the system still needs coherence. In a district with intense college expectations, assessment reform can become a source of mistrust if families do not understand how new practices preserve rigor, fairness, and college readiness. The district's outcomes give it permission to innovate. The community's expectations make that innovation hard. Athletics and student life are also central to the Scarsdale value proposition. Scarsdale's athletics program is broad for a public district. It includes traditional sports like baseball, basketball, football, soccer, lacrosse, tennis, volleyball, swimming, track and field, wrestling, golf, field hockey, softball, and ice hockey. It also includes less common or specialized offerings such as crew, fencing, skiing, ultimate frisbee, bowling, cheerleading, dance, gymnastics, and girls' flag football. That breadth matters. In a district where academic pressure is a recurring theme, extracurricular life is not peripheral. It is part of how students connect to school, build identity, compete, collaborate, and lead. The district has also had recent athletic success. One clear example is girls' flag football. Scarsdale completed an undefeated 22-0 season and won the 2025 Class A state championship, defeating Half Hollow Hills 22-6. The local report noted that the program was only 3 years old. That makes the success more interesting. It suggests that Scarsdale's athletic system can absorb newer sports and participation pathways, not just sustain traditional ones. Facilities are connected to this as well. The 2026 capital bond includes work across the district and specifically includes a Scarsdale Middle School turf field project. Voter support for the bond suggests that the community continues to see facilities, including athletic and outdoor space, as part of the district's long-term educational infrastructure. That brings us to finance and governance. In May 2026, Scarsdale voters approved a $197.1 million school budget for 2026 to 27 with 77.2% support. They also approved a $101.7 million capital bond with 71.6% support. Those are strong approval margins. They show that the community continues to support the schools. But the underlying budget story is more constrained than the headline suggests. The proposed 2026 to 27 budget increased by 2.92% and stayed within the tax cap. But local reporting described nearly $2 million in reductions needed to make the budget work. Cost pressures included rising health insurance, salaries and wages, Social Security and Medicare, contractual obligations, student services, and insurance. The district's operating model is expensive because it is broad. It includes small elementary class sizes, the middle schoolhouse and team structure, a wide high school program of study, student support services, social emotional learning, global opportunities, athletics, and facilities needs. That is not a criticism, it is the model. But it means sustainability depends on continued voter support and disciplined prioritization. The capital bond is significant as well. The final bond scope totals just over $101.7 million and reflects a multi-year planning process. The fact that both the budget and bond passed comfortably is a positive sign. But the bond had a lower approval rate than the operating budget, which suggests that major capital spending is not frictionless, even in a community that strongly supports its schools. The governance theme is simple. Scarsdale still has a high trust funding base, but public scrutiny is increasing. That scrutiny is showing up in several places. One of the most serious recent issues involved an anti-Semitic incident connected to flyers for a student-led Israeli Culture Club event. Reports said the flyers were torn down and thrown away, with some reportedly found in a urinal. Students said the incident left them hurt and wanting change. The school board discussed student speech and dress guidelines, and other reporting described disciplinary action and a petition signed by more than 700 parents calling for the resignation of a connected board member. This should be understood as more than an isolated disciplinary issue. For a district that talks about belonging, democratic participation, and living well in an interdependent world, incidents like this test whether those values are operational. They test whether the district can respond not just procedurally, but culturally. There have also been debates around math curriculum and grading practices. Local reporting described community discussion around Reveal Math and the rolling gradebook, with parents raising concerns and administrators spending board meeting time on those topics. The rolling gradebook debate connects to the district's broader assessment reform. A rolling gradebook generally emphasizes cumulative performance over time, rather than treating each marking period as a completely separate grade. In theory, that can support growth and learning over time, but in practice, grading policies affect student stress, college expectations, perceptions of fairness, and family trust. So this debate should not be reduced to parents resisting change. In a district like Scarsdale, grading is tied to identity, college readiness, rigor, and pressure. The district will need to explain clearly what it is doing, why it is doing it, and how it will know whether the changes are working. Budget pressure is another live issue. Scarsdale preserved a broad program in the 2026 to 27 budget, but it did so while making reductions and staffing adjustments. The strategic risk is not necessarily one dramatic cut, it is cumulative erosion. A position here, a support there, a specialized program deferred, a class size rising gradually. Over time, that can change the student experience. For Scarsdale, breadth is part of the brand, but breadth is also expensive. So, what is genuinely distinctive about Scarsdale? Several districts in Westchester and the New York suburbs have high test scores and strong college placement. Scarsdale's distinctiveness seems to come from the combination of five things. First, the outcomes are strong across multiple levels. This is not just one impressive number. The district shows strength in college-going SAT, ACT, AP, Regents, English Language Arts, Math, and Science. Second, the opportunity portfolio is broad. Students have access to advanced courses, design and engineering pathways, social entrepreneurship, global education, senior options, the alternative school, athletics, and many other activities. Third, the district is explicitly moving toward deeper learning. Scarsdale is not only talking about inquiry, choice, and performance-based assessment, it has made those topics part of external review and district improvement work. Fourth, the community is still willing to invest. The 2026 budget and bond results show that voters continue to support the system, even amid debate, controversy, and cost pressure. Fifth, the district's expectations create both excellence and pressure. When outcomes are already very high, any change can feel risky. When college expectations are intense, well-being reforms can be viewed skeptically. When the district offers many programs, budget prioritization becomes politically sensitive. That is the core tension. Scarsdale is not dealing with excellence versus mediocrity, it is dealing with excellence versus sustainability. There are several positive insights that stand out. The first is the AP expansion. Scarsdale more than doubled AP exam volume from 2020 to 2025, while maintaining a 4.2 mean score and a 95% rate of exams scoring 3 or higher. That is impressive. The second is science. Grade 5 and grade 8 science results suggest that science is a real strength, not just a minor part of the academic story. The third is that student agency is not just a slogan, it shows up in real programs and structures. The fourth is the alternative school. For readers outside Scarsdale, it is important to understand that this is not remedial. It is a long-standing experimental option for mainstream students seeking more voice in their education. The fifth is athletics breadth, especially the success of newer sports like girls' flag football. And the sixth is voter support. Even in a more contested environment, the operating budget and capital bond both passed by wide margins. At the same time, there are real watch items for 2026 and 2027. Assessment reform could outpace family understanding. If families do not understand how performance-based assessment preserves rigor and fairness, reform could become a trust issue. Student stress remains a strategic risk. Scarsdale's own external review recommended reducing pressure related to grades and assessments. In a district like this, that is not a soft issue. It is central to whether the high-performance model is sustainable. Math curriculum implementation needs continued attention. Concerns around reveal math and grading practices show that implementation matters as much as curriculum selection. Fiscal pressure could gradually narrow the opportunity portfolio. The risk is not sudden decline, it is slow compression. Community cohesion and belonging require active repair. The Israeli Culture Club flyer incident was painful and public. A district that emphasizes civic life, belonging, and interdependence needs to show that those values hold when they are tested. And subgroup transparency remains limited. Because New York State reports essentially no economically disadvantaged students in Scarsdale, ED versus non-ED proficiency comparisons cannot carry the analytical weight they might in other districts. Analysts should focus on other valid equity lenses, including race and ethnicity, where reportable, English learners, students with disabilities, access to advanced programs, extracurricular participation, student belonging, disciplinary patterns, and course-taking pathways. So what does all of this mean for district leadership? For Scarsdale, the next phase is less about launching more initiatives and more about managing coherence. The district has many strengths: exceptional academic outcomes, a broad program base, a sophisticated high school opportunity structure, external validation of deeper learning efforts, strong voter support, and an engaged community. But those strengths also create complexity. Families may support innovation in principle while questioning implementation in practice. Students may benefit from challenge while also feeling pressure. Voters may support the schools while scrutinizing capital costs. Teachers may embrace performance assessment while still needing time, definitions, training, and consistency. The leadership agenda is not mysterious, but it is difficult. Scarsdale needs to define the model clearly. What does the district mean by student agency, rigor, performance-based assessment, well-being, and belonging? Families need concrete examples, not jargon. The district also needs to protect the evidence base. It should continue reporting outcomes, but it should distinguish carefully between overall performance, subgroup performance, participation, access, and student experience. It needs to treat implementation as strategy. Math, grading, assessment, and well-being reforms will succeed or fail based on teacher support, communication, consistency, and feedback loops. It needs to make trade-offs explicit. No district can indefinitely expand programs, maintain small classes, modernize facilities, preserve every specialized offering, and minimize tax impact without prioritizing. And where trust has been damaged, the district needs to rebuild it visibly. That includes responding to the anti-Semitism incident and related governance tensions, not only procedurally but culturally, through a clear commitment to belonging, safety, and respectful civic life. The final assessment is this: Scarsdale in 2026 is a high-performing district at a strategic inflection point. It has the outcomes most districts aspire to: high college-going rates, very strong SAT and ACT results, exceptional AP performance, strong Regents results, high K through 8 proficiency, and broad athletics and enrichment opportunities. It also has something more distinctive: a serious attempt to move beyond a narrow achievement model towards student agency, deeper learning, performance-based assessment, real-world application, and civic purpose. That ambition is credible because it is supported by real programs, advanced topics, senior options, STEAM, the alternative school, global education, social entrepreneurship, and a wide extracurricular portfolio. It is also challenging because Scarsdale's community has very high expectations, and every change is filtered through concerns about rigor, fairness, stress, college preparation, taxes, and trust. So the best summary is simple: Scarsdale is not trying to become a good district. It is trying to remain an exceptional district while redefining what exceptional should mean.